All right, so welcome back to the Healing by Design series. We took a little break over the holidays, but we're back going A through Z through every health condition. And we're on C, and we're probably going on C for a while because today's Candida, and then we're doing cancer. And then after cancer, we're doing breast cancer specifically, we're doing prostate and colon cancer specifically, and we're even doing skin cancer. So there's going to be a lot of C's over the next couple of months. Well, let me open in prayer. So, Father, we thank you so much for your greatness, your glory, your beauty. Help us to understand more the human body, your design of the world. Help us to understand sickness and disease. Help us to understand and continue to see your healing power and your miracles and your breakthroughs. We believe that you're good, and we know that you have answers for all of our afflictions. We trust you in all things. In Jesus' name, amen. So, Candida... I'm going to give you a little intro, as I do with all the classes in this Healing by Design series. I don't believe God gives us these illnesses that we're afflicted with, especially in this topic of Candida and these. I'm kind of going to make this more of a broad topic on related to infectious disease in general. We're going to talk specifically about Candida, but really this is about infections and infectious disease, which is rampant. It's been rampant all throughout history, and it's still a major issue today. There's cause and effect to our world based on how God designed the world to work. The way I like to describe it to people is God breathed all things into existence. We read the Genesis story, and He created all things through His spoken word, and He set things into motion. So what we know as chemistry and physics and all the things that we're discovering are really all things God put in motion from the beginning, such as, gravity, right? That's just something that works based off of God's design. And so many of the things that we're suffering from today is because we're out of alignment with how God designed us to live on this earth. So we're out of alignment with the basic laws of chemistry. If I go jump off a cliff, I'm out of alignment with the basic laws of physics. Right? Fair? That was supposed to be a joke. But chances are, if I jump off a cliff, I'm going to be in trouble. God could save me, but there's a law of gravity that most likely I'm going to be subject to because of my stupidity, right? So I really think that's important to understand, that the majority, and I'm not going to say all, but the vast majority of everything we call sickness and disease, from the little sniffle we get to the severest things such as cancer, is a result of us not being aligned with how God designed us to live on this earth. And so also my heart is for us to get off of the man-made medical system, get onto God's system of medicine. So I don't believe we need all the pharmaceutical drugs and things that are out there. We use them because that's all we know. That's all we've been told there's available. That system's not going to be around forever. God's system is going to be around forever. And when things get tough, I don't want people on that system. I want people on God's system, and I want to see people healthy and well and not reliant on pharmaceutical drugs and those things. So, I also believe a lot of Christians are confused about sickness and disease, why we're sick, why God's not healing people more. We might have seen some miracles, maybe not. I feel like I see miracles every day in people choosing God and the things of God and how they're stewarding their body, how they're choosing food and nutrition, how they're choosing herbs, how they're choosing nature and God's creation to heal. It doesn't always have to be a healing miracle. I think that's a mistake that a lot of us make, is that believing that God only heals through instantaneously delivering somebody of all things related to cancer. And sometimes He does that, but sometimes He doesn't. And a lot of that is because, well, one, He'll let us make our own choices and go our own way. I mean, that's just the sin and the fall of humanity. He'll let us do our own things, even if they're wrong. That's free will, that's free choice. But He's always there waiting for us to return back to Him. And so, again, that's our heart, is to show people that if we choose God, the things of God, realign ourselves with how God designed us to live on this earth, we don't have to suffer from this huge mess of sickness and disease that we're in today. So let's get into Candida. Candida, if you don't really know what Candida is, or you haven't heard that before, it's an organism. What's interesting about Candida is it's an organism that actually is supposed to be in the human body. Okay? We're supposed to have Candida and different types of yeast organisms in our body. But it's opportunistic, and so if there's conditions are suitable for it to grow out of control and cause problems, it will do so. The most important thing I think I want to explain to people related to this Candida issue, and again, all related infectious disease issues, is going back, not too far back in history, going back to the time of Louis Pasteur. And you guys have probably heard of Louis Pasteur. That's where pasteurization came from. And he was a proponent of germs cause disease, and we got to kill the germs, and we have to heat and pasteurize and kill everything, and that's the way that we're going to be sanitary and we're going to be healthy and well. And then we fast forward to like antibiotics. We created antibiotics. We thought we'd cured disease basically, because so many health issues are related to infectious diseases. And so we thought now we had the answer to all sickness and disease. And of course we see where we're at today, we're not anywhere close to that. Back when Louis Pasteur was around, there was another guy named Antoine Béchamp. And he was also a scientist, and he believed that it wasn't the germ that caused the disease, it was the health of the body, of the terrain. It's called the land versus the seed theory, if you've ever heard of that, but it's the land or our terrain that's important to resisting sickness and disease, not the fact that there's germs and parasites and bacteria and viruses on this earth, because there are. And everything I look at is based off of God's design and God's perspective on how the world's created. And there are infectious organisms in this world, but most of them are around because of dirty, unsanitary environments, unclean things, because their job, why did God create these types of organisms? Their job is to break down and recycle things back to the earth. Okay, so if you put stuff in your compost bin, it gets broken down by different types of bugs and creatures and organisms that turns it back into soil. So if those things are in our body, we might think that there's a problem, but it's how God designed it to work. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, so what's happened is we've believed this theory that germs cause disease, and so we started a war on germs, and we've been fighting germs ever since. And I think we're fighting the wrong battle, because we're not learning about how to live in cooperation with how God designed us to live on this earth. We're dust of the earth, Genesis 2:7. I quote that scripture all the time. The Lord God formed man out of dust of the ground. And I did a whole series of classes called Foundation of Creation series, and I talked for an hour and a half just on probiotics and living bacteria. The fact that just as the earth has bacteria in it, so our bodies has bacteria on it. Trillions of bacteria on it, on our skin and inside of our bodies. And it's what keeps us healthy and well. It's what protects us. It's what keeps us from getting eaten alive by infectious bacteria. The fact that we have healthy bacteria on our skin, it protects us. But we also have those bacteria in our gut and inside of our bodies. So my main point here is that we learn to live in cooperation with how God designed the earth to work, not looking at all bugs, germs, viruses, even parasites as bad, but understanding how do we work within the principles of how God designed us to live on this earth. Because native cultures all throughout history lived on the earth and in the earth, and they're surrounded by bugs and bacteria and germs. So how did they deal with this? And we like to think that our modern medicine had something to do with eliminating infectious disease in our culture, and A, it hasn't, and B, it's still as rampant as ever today. Most infectious diseases that we know of can be cleaned up just with living within biblical principles of eating clean and washing hands and doing some basic things. But you don't hear about people getting like cholera anymore, or diphtheria, or some of those other diseases that were mainly from like dirty, poor drinking water, dirty sanitation. Like, we've done away with most of those things. And it's because of the way we've cleaned up our environment. It's not because modern medicine had anything to do with it. I just have to make that very clear. So what's happened with like this Candida issue is that it's not the Candida's fault. Okay, Candida is something God designed, and Candida is actually supposed to be in our bodies in a healthy balance, but it's not. And so why? And so this is with all infectious disease. I believe that our bodies are supposed to be strong and resilient. We're going to go places, we're going to encounter bugs and germs and parasites, and sometimes they're going to make us really sick, and sometimes we're not even going to know they're there. And you got 10 people that go on a trip and all drink the same dirty water, and 6 of them get sick and 4 of them don't, or whatever. Why? Because it's about the terrain. It's about the health of your body. It's not about the bug or the organism. I just have to stress that. But I do see people over and over again that they say, man, all my health issues started as soon as I got back from that mission trip from Honduras, everything went downhill. Or as soon as I went to, was it you that went to Honduras? I don't know why I said that. No, okay. Or when I got back from Korea or whatever. You know, we go to these third world countries, and it doesn't have to be third world. You go to America, you go in a hospital, you can pick up MRSA and die. Okay? Hospitals are very dangerous places to be. But these infectious organisms are everywhere. We're going to encounter them. So let's understand how to take care of our bodies and our terrain. The example I love to give people is our bodies are designed to be clear, flowing rivers of life. Okay, we have a cardiovascular system, we have a lymphatic system, everything should be flowing well. And if we encounter a germ or a bug, which we do all the time, we have stomach acid that should kill it, and we have an immune system that should take care of it, and you might never know what happens. Now, once in a while you pick up a bug, a flu, a virus, your body responds, it kills it, and you should be stronger and more resilient for it. But it doesn't always work out that way. And again, it just depends on the health of our bodies. Because we're supposed to be clean flowing rivers, I give the people the example, like, think of the Colorado Mountain, fresh stream coming down the Colorado Mountain River. Would you drink out of that stream? I would. I wouldn't be overly worried about that. But then you got a green stagnant pond down the road that's full of all kinds of scum and moss and stuff like that. Would you drink that? Probably not. Why? Because that's stagnant. It's not free flowing. And same with our bodies. If our bodies are free flowing and everything's working right, we're pretty much immune to sickness and disease. It doesn't mean that we're not going to pick up a bug here and there, the body's going to fight it, we're going to have some mucus, we're going to be sick for a few days and move on. But we're not going to get hit with these things that debilitate us, knock us out, or even kill us, which is what we're seeing happen today because our bodies are weaker. The other example I give people is your fish tank. If you've ever had a fish tank, you got to take care of the fish tank. If you let the little oxygen thing go out, or the little thing that keeps the water, moving, or the light's not working right, or whatever, like, you can start to grow some mold and some funky things in your fish tank. And if the fish gets sick, you don't try to figure out what's wrong with the fish. You don't take the fish to the vet to get figured out. You fix the fish tank. Again, same thing with our bodies. We got to fix and take care of our bodies. That's why Candida and yeast and fungus and mold and parasites are growing out of control in our bodies, is because our bodies are out of balance. Now, if we don't think infectious disease is an issue today, just think about it. What do you think is the most commonly prescribed medication in all of medicine? Antibiotics, hands down. No question about it. I mean, you go to the doctor, and if they can't figure out what's going on with you, they just give you an antibiotic, because you know what, it might help, because I don't really know what's going on. I mean, and I still hear today people like, doctors don't know what's going on. Is it fungal? Is it bacterial? Is it viral? Give them an antibiotic. And people are like, well, I think it might be a virus. What would an antibiotic do? Well, it wouldn't do anything. But they just default to throwing people antibiotics. And this has been happening since the late 20s. And we know now that it's destroying the human body. It might work in a pinch, it might work one time, it might save somebody's life. I guarantee you there's been tens of thousands of people whose lives have been saved by antibiotics. But I'm telling you, it's not the answer, because our bodies are out of balance and weak in the first place, and God's given us plenty of tools and things we can use to get our bodies back into health and back into balance. So, if we have Candida symptoms or issues, we have to understand that most likely it's a systemic issue. And we know we have all kinds of infectious issues in our culture today, because every time we take our kid to the hospital, they're giving them antibiotics. And people are getting lung issues, and they're giving them an antibiotic. And yeast infections and urinary tract infections, and it's just nonstop, these infectious issues going on inside the body. And what they're doing is they're living inside of our bodies, and they're basically just waiting for a moment for you to be weak, to you to be super stressed out for a week, to go through some horrible stress event in your life, or for you to have that week where you go on a cruise and eat whatever you want for a week, or something that's going to trigger and allow that infection to just grow out of control and cause an issue again. And again, we go to the hospital, we get antibiotics, and we see this happening with children with ear infections, even just colds and flus. Parents will run to the hospital and get an antibiotic. And it is weakening our children weaker and weaker and weaker each generation. So, signs of yeast, candida, overgrowth. Some of the obvious ones I want to give you first. It would be if you have a noticeable fungal infection on your body. If you have athlete's foot, per se, or itching between your toes, that's probably not just because you picked it up in a dirty gym. These are internal issues that are manifesting outward. So if you got what they call jock itch, or some kind of fungal rash infection around your growing area, the toes is a common place. Ringworm is a common infection. Itchy eyes, ears, nose, itchy butt. If your symptoms are noticeably worse, if you noticeably feel worse when it's cold, wet, damp, and muggy, and this is common. I mean, people shift with the seasons. I mean, this is why people move to Phoenix, Arizona, because it's hot and dry. And infectious organisms don't like hot, dry weather. They like cold, damp, muggy, wet environments. You know how many people I see that they didn't seem to have any health issues, and then they moved to Kansas City? Yeah, I hear it. Mm-hmm. Yep, because this is a cold, wet, damp, muggy place. Even in the summer, it's still pretty humid. And so this is an environment where these types of organisms can live and thrive in the human body. So this is why people move to hot, dry places. So sugar, bread, carb cravings that are out of control. There's many reasons people crave sugars and sweets and carbs, but one of them is infectious disease organisms living inside your body will cause you to crave things that you don't want and you know aren't good for you. That is a common sign. Memory, brain fog, concentration, digestive issues, a dead giveaway too. Lots of bloating, lots of gas, usually means you have infectious organisms in your gut. I've talked about this when I talked about autism and some other issues. These are gut issues. The body's just literally riddled or taken over with infectious organisms, with these candida, yeast, fungus, mold, even parasites taking over the body. Now, God is a good designer. He didn't mess up his design when we see children with these issues. It's the body's been compromised, usually from weakness in our generations and our grandparents and our parents' choices on down. But it's an imbalance in the system causing the nervous system, the brain, the different parts of the body not to work. And so there's always a reason. Again, there's always cause and effect. These aren't just like things, disease doesn't just pop out of nowhere. Let's just say that. Another symptom is, and I want to kind of explain it a little bit because it's kind of a weird one. It's kind of interesting, and it's actually feeling drunk. And I've seen this in my office where people are like, man, when I eat breads and pasta and sugary stuff, I feel woozy. I feel like I'm drunk. Now that is again, a clear sign of a candida yeast fungal overgrowth in your body. You probably crave this stuff like crazy. You can't even hardly stop yourself. Usually the cravings are worse in the evening. And so what it is, it's that these organisms, like candida, they eat. So this is just the not fun part I have to talk about when I talk about these kind of classes, but they're living organisms. Living organisms created by God. And all living organisms eat, breathe, and excrete waste. So when you have yeast organisms overgrown in your body, they eat bread, sugar. They eat complex starch and sugar molecules. That's their food. Their waste byproduct is alcohol. It's called acetaldehyde. And so people's bodies get overrun with this acetaldehyde waste byproduct, and it literally makes them feel like they're drunk. I see it in kids a lot. That the parents will describe the children as almost acting like they're tipsy and they're drunk after they eat a bunch of bread and pasta. And you think how many kids that all they eat is starches and sugars and carbs. They're addicted to this stuff because of these infections that are in their body. It's driving the cravings. So that's a weird one, but yeah, we might seem like we're a little tipsy because of the alcohol waste byproducts that these organisms produce. And that keeps the body in a constant state of acidosis, which is contrary to health. Remember I said God is a chemist and our bodies are out of balance. And if you look at simple chemistry, acids and bases, one of the biggest reasons we're sick today is because we're not alkaline, because we're acid. And that is the environment in which infectious organisms can live and take over a human body. It's basically living in just a lot of waste in the body. That's where infectious organisms will live. Because remember, just to bring this point home, God designed these infectious organisms, what we call infectious organisms, designed them to break things down and recycle things back to the earth. So why do people have yeast, candida, fungal mold overgrowth in their body? It's because the environment there is suitable for them to live and to thrive. And there's so much toxins or acidity or undigested food or waste in the body that it's living in it, just like it would in your fish tank if you didn't take care of it. So I know that's like, God, I hate to think of it that way, and that's gross, and especially when we're thinking of our kids, but I want it to be real to us because this is real. You can't see what's going on inside your body. But I'm telling you, this is what's going on inside of people's body. Anybody who's been chronically ill for years and years and years and has been to the doctors and tried every drug and tried every diet and every health supplement out there and it's not better, 98% chance their body is riddled with infectious disease. Anybody who's been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, cancer, all these really debilitating conditions have infectious organisms living in their body. Would pretty much guarantee it. And there's plenty of doctors and natural researchers that have proved this over and over. Dr. Hulda Clark and Dr. C. Massini, and you could go on down the list. They have seen this in their research and working with thousands of people with diseases. So why does this happen? Why do we get Candida yeast overgrowth happening in the body? Or any infectious organism for that matter, parasites, etc. Think of urinary tract infections, which is E. coli bacteria usually. I talked about that when I did the bladder infections class. We did that one already. It was a B. So these are infectious organisms. Again, there's acidity in the urinary tract that's allowing these E. coli bacteria to stay there and live there. And they flare up when you're stressed, you're anxious, you have a weak moment where you just go crazy on your food. That's what's going to flare these things up until we get the river flowing again. And we're going to talk about how to heal these issues. So why does it happen? I think the biggest reason we're having these issues today is modern medicine. Antibiotics destroy, it's an all-purpose killer. The way I explain antibiotics, they're not designed by God, they're designed by man. Anything designed by man does not have the intelligence of God in it unless he's taking something that God made and just giving it to people. You're a farmer, you grow food, give it to people. I know that's messed up today too, but you see what I'm saying. But when you take petrochemical, coal tar, petroleum-based things, bring them to a laboratory, manipulate the molecular structure of it, test it on poor, sad animals, and then give it to a person to force something to happen on their body, there's no intelligence in that. That's plain God. That's playing with molecules and forcing something to happen on your body. And that's what modern medicine is. That's what all these pharmaceutical drugs are. Because they can't patent it and they can't make money if it's not synthetic and it's not a chemical. You can't patent things. I can't patent ginger because God gave us ginger, right? So antibiotics, probably the biggest reason we have the epidemic of infectious disease that we have today. Steroids completely wipes out the immune system, wipes out your adrenal glands, which is really important to hormone balance and to your immune system. Birth control, Oh my gosh, I don't even want to talk about birth control. It's so sad to me. Doctors giving young children birth control, increasing their risk of cancer, potentially affecting their ability to have children later in their life. I mean, it's criminal. It's absolutely criminal that we give birth control to people. And so many, I mean, and thousands, I guarantee you most women I see have taken birth control at some time in their life. And the doctor never told them the risks of it, and who actually reads the label, you know? I mean, increased risk of cancer, you can go on down the list. But one of the things it does is it wipes out all our healthy bacteria. It wipes out all our good bacteria, birth control pills. These are all man-made chemicals. Chemotherapy obviously destroys the immune system. And then if antibiotics aren't seeming to work or they need something stronger, we'll often resort to these antifungals. So you've heard of like nystatin or diflucan. There's other ones, but these are antifungals. But they do the same thing. They're all-purpose killers. They destroy everything in the human body. You know, I call it the hand grenade approach to medicine. You know, let's throw a hand grenade in there and we'll kill some bad guys, but we killed all the good guys too. So it's just not appropriate. And it's not cooperating with how God designed us to live on the earth. God designed us to live in harmony and in balance with what we call infectious organisms. He's teaching us through infectious organisms that your water has to be clean, that you have to wash your hands before you perform surgery on somebody. You know, that sounds common sense, but did you know in the 1800s doctors didn't wash their hands and they killed women by the thousands? Yeah, and then when somebody mentioned it, they laughed about it. And anyway, that's a whole nother story. Poor diet, the white sugar, the white flour, just all the processed foods we're eating, it's feeding infectious disease. It's feeding infectious organisms. And when our bodies are weak and acidic, we crave junk. We crave bad stuff. If you crave things that you know are not good for you, there's a reason. It's not just weak. You're not just, I'm not strong enough. It's mind over matter. There's real physical reasons. Now, people do emotional eating. And yes, there's other issues like that too. But what I really want to highlight to people is that there's real physical reasons why people can't seem to control themselves. Because their body has lots of infectious organisms that want to eat sugar and starch, or their pancreas is weak, or their adrenals are weak and they're fatigued. There's all kinds of reasons people overeat and eat the wrong things, but the infectious disease is a big one. The vaccines we're given to our children, the antibiotics, all the over-the-counter stuff, again, this is all man-made chemical attempt at medicine. And it's mainly because I'm not saying man had ill intentions. Man's just backwards and upside down in his thinking. If our focus and our thought isn't on God and communing with God and living with God and trying to understand God and how He designed the world and trying to live in cooperation with that, what we end up doing is we end up fighting God's design. And that's what we've done with Candida and yeast and in all these organisms. We're fighting a war on germs instead of trying to live in harmony with the way God designed us to live on the earth. Does that make sense? And we just haven't picked up on that. Like, we're still doing it today. And it's almost one of those things, I just feel like we know the truth more and more and more, but we're so ingrained in the old system, and there's so many people's reputations at stake, and nobody wants to admit that they're wrong, and everybody's so full of pride that we can't change. We can't change. And people continue to die, and our children continue to suffer, especially related over these infectious diseases. It's a big, big deal, especially when it comes to our kids. You know, we're running out and getting flu shots because our bodies are so weak. We think we need a man-made, chemical-filled, toxic soup going into our body to protect us. It's complete madness, the world we've created. So, again, God designed us to live in cooperation with these organisms, including Candida and yeast and these different types of organisms. What happens is when the body's weak, the body is acidic. When you have heavy metals, chemicals, other toxins in your body, the Candida that are already there start to proliferate and grow out of control in the attempts of breaking down and ridding the body of the acids and the waste that are in the body. People who have studied, for example, mercury and mercury fillings, when a person's body's full of mercury, they've seen Candida and yeast overgrowths in the body as the Candida proliferates, trying to break down the mercury because it's not supposed to be there. I hope you can kind of read between the lines of what I'm trying to say here. God's a good designer. He created these organisms to break down waste off of the earth. And if that waste in our body, it's trying to break down that waste that's trapped in our bodies. Candida and yeast are never going to be able to break down mercury. This stuff is just poison. You got to chelate and do things to get mercury out of the body. But just the fact that your gut is just you've done antibiotics, you've done birth control, you're eating white flour, you're eating white sugar, your gut's just out of balance, and it's just out of control with these yeast fungal parasite organisms. And we just have to restore that balance by putting the good things back in there. So let's talk about that. Oh, I was going to talk about real quick diet. I can't go over an hour because I'm short on my time. What feeds yeast and fungus and these types of organisms? Again, they're there for a reason. They're trying to break down something that shouldn't be there. It's because our bodies are out of balance. Our fish tanks are dirty, right? And so what we have to do is not feed them. Because they're there, they're opportunistic, they're going to grow out of control if you feed them. Main thing that feeds them is sugar, starch, and all complex carbs. I want to explain to you quickly the difference between simple sugars and complex sugars, because this is very, very important, especially related to infectious disease. Now, if you look at Body Ecology Diet, which is the best program out there, I think, for Candida and yeast, and she's helped thousands of people, and she's helped kids with autism, and she's helped all kinds of issues by healing the gut. Body Ecology Diet, BED. I think it's the best program out there for this. I want to explain one thing though. The body uses simple sugars for fuel and for energy. Simple sugars is fruit. Okay? People like fruit. I like fruit. You like fruit? Good. We like fruit. It's a simple sugar. Okay? Body Ecology Diet is no fruit. And I think that's probably wise in the beginning if you have a major overgrowth of Candida, yeast, fungus, these types of issues. However, when you get your body under control and you eat fruit, if you eat it the right way, if you eat high water content hydrating fruits, if you eat grapes and melons and citrus, it's simple sugar, it's quick in, quick out, it's energy, it's fuel for the body, and it doesn't feed these infectious organisms if we eat it on an empty stomach and we just use it as a quick energy or fuel source. So it's really important you eat fruit on an empty stomach if you're going to eat fruit. Because if you eat fruit with protein, fats, other foods, it starts to ferment in the body, and that's what starts to feed the yeast organisms in the body if it stays in the body and it starts to ferment. Because fruit breaks down really fast. You throw an apple out in your yard, it breaks down really fast. Throw a T-bone steak out in your yard, it doesn't break down very fast. But fruit breaks down very fast, okay? So even though it's good to avoid fruit in the beginning, that's usually one of the first things you can add back in if you're fighting any type of infectious issue. Now let me tell you why we struggle with systemic infections, yeast infections, fungal infections. We're getting sick all the time, we're needing antibiotics all the time. Is because our whole culture is addicted to complex grains and complex sugars. Okay, so fruit, simple sugar, quick in, quick out. Bread, pasta, pizza, crackers, chips, baked goods, maple syrup, cane sugar, agave, your healthy sugars, they're all complex sugars. The body doesn't need them, has no use for them. It has to break them down into simple sugars to use them. The product of breaking them down into simple sugars creates acid waste byproduct that has to be dealt with by your lymph, your kidneys, your liver, and it feeds infections in your body. And so this is, also diabetes and cancer and, all types of major issues. We need to get away from the grains and the complex sugars. We have to stop trying to, now again, if you're in good health and you're active and you don't have any health issues, just eat healthy stuff. You can eat sprouted Ezekiel bread and have a little maple syrup once in a while. It's not a big deal. But for most of us, and I'm in that category, that have health issues or have dealt with issues and you're trying to restore your health, stop trying to find out how to eat the healthy sugar. Stop trying to find the healthy grains. Stop trying to eat the sprouted breads. It's still bread. It's still a complex sugar. It's still going to cause all of those issues. It's still going to cause acidosis, feed infections in your body, be hard on your kidneys, and on down the list. So you got to know where you're at in your health. But I really want people to understand that this is what's feeding this, this infectious disease issue. You know how many people I see that like they get a cold or a flu, it seems like a minor little thing, and it never goes away? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, they're still battling this thing or on and off. And then you ask them about their diet, and you know, they're eating bread and pasta and cereal and crack. I mean, they're just eating tons of carbs. And so that infectious disease organism is not going to be able to get eliminated by your body and your immune system as long as you're constantly feeding fuel to that fire. So changing the diet is a huge deal. We'll save questions to the end, but write it down. So, I hope you understand the difference between simple and complex sugars, because it's very, very, very important. If you're battling any health issue, you want to get away from complex sugars and starches, all of them. The other one is dairy, and it's just because dairy is heavy, it's mucus forming, it's congesting to the lymph in the lungs. Same thing. I never recommend dairy. I don't care if it's the most beautiful, 100% grass-fed, raw milk straight from the farm. If you're healthy, great. If you're not, don't touch it, because it's designed for a cow, and if your digestion is at all compromised and you have any issues in your gut or your lymph or your liver or your lungs or anything, you cannot process it, and it will contribute to you staying sick and getting sicker. Just because it's a heavy food. It's hard to process, it's hard to digest. I never recommend animal milk to children. Never. You know, it sounds contrary to like our culture for the last 100 years. You know, like all kids are not going to survive if they don't drink animal milk. And it's just not true. All right, so diet-wise, just put vegetables. The only exception to that would be like potatoes, you know, because they're super starchy. Vegetables, nuts and seeds would be okay. Your lean meats would be good. Chicken, turkey, fish, eggs, those kind of things. Herbs, spices, your seaweeds and your sea vegetables. That's your basic diet. That's kind of the body ecology diet for the most part. The first thing you'd add back in when you got your body pretty healthy and kind of back under control, you could add fruit in, but it really needs to be on an empty stomach. It really needs to be high water content, hydrating fruits, which is not bananas and figs and dates and dried fruit. Those are super high sugary fruits, but it'd be more your high water content fruits that I mentioned earlier. So healing. Diet is number one. It's the most important thing. You're either like once your body's compromised with Candida, you're either continuing to feed the fuel to the fire or you're not feeding it. Just like with anything else, if you stop feeding it, it'll go away. So we have to stop feeding the yeast organisms until we reestablish balance and health in our bodies. So that's the most important thing is diet. And this is why most people with chronic Candida and systemic health issues fail, is because they do the right things long enough to feel better, and then they go back, right? Most people who struggled with, I can pretty much guarantee you, because I've done it, I don't know how many times, anybody who struggled with their health has learned that there are certain foods that don't work well with them. And they know that they stay away from those foods. Oh my gosh, I feel amazing. I'm like a new person. And then they always go back to those foods. So we have to really get a long-term vision. You know, this is about discipline. You know, I don't share these things a lot, but I do feel like one of the reasons the Lord allows sickness and disease is, one, so we can learn about Him and how we've gone astray and how we can turn back to Him. But He also wants us to learn discipline. And I love miracles, and I might be crazy in my prayers, but I love God's miracles when they're needed. But when it comes to sickness and disease, I actually pray that we learn discipline. I pray that we learn how to live in cooperation, in aligning ourselves with how God designed us to live on this earth. Because I think that's a much bigger miracle than the instantaneous miracle. You learn self-control, you learn discipline. Now, if somebody's on their deathbed, God give us a miracle. But for people who are just sick and struggling and out of balance, I know it's tough. I know it's hard. I'm there. I've been there with you. But I would prefer to learn the ways of God in it. And so I'm stressing that with this Candida yeast issue because people yo-yo. They yo-yo. They eat the breads and the sugars and the starches and they feel like junk, and then they come off of it and they feel better, and then they go back to it, and they're just on this never-ending roller coaster. And that's okay. It's okay to be there. That's how we learn. But eventually we want to have long-term vision. We want to have long-term vision to restore health in our bodies. One of the most important things to preventing infectious disease and overcoming these issues is having strong stomach acid. So it starts with digestion. It starts in the gut. There's a reason stomach acid pH is 2.5. It's so that it kills yeast, fungus, E. coli. If we eat something in our food, the hydrochloric acid should kill it. And most people who have a lot of infections in their body have really weak stomach acid. And so their body's not able to protect them against these infectious organisms. And so you can take hydrochloric acid. You can take, a lot of people know about Bragg's apple cider vinegar with meals is very helpful for digestion. It increases stomach acid. Sea salt increases stomach acid. Cayenne pepper increases stomach acid. Baking soda on an empty stomach increases stomach acid, but it has to be on an empty stomach. I recommend it when people wake up in the morning, do a little water with baking soda. We know we can do it in an emergency when we have indigestion or heartburn or acid reflux. That's not the best time to do it. The best time to do it is on an empty stomach, because actually it alkalizes the stomach acid and forces the body to dump more stomach acid into the body, which long-term helps with digestion. All right, so those are quick, easy tips to kind of purify and cleanse our system. You got Candida yeast organisms in your body. Salt purifies. What have we used throughout history for purification? Biblically, what did the Jewish people wash their babies with when they were born? Salt water. And it was part of the purification of the offering, that everything would be washed in salt. So purification, sea salt, purification, baking soda. And then you get into apple cider vinegar and fermented foods. So you probably know about Candida yeast organisms, and you could watch that whole hour-and-a-half class I did on the Foundation of Creation series. But we are made of living organisms, and we've wiped a lot of them out through pharmaceutical drugs and diet, and so we can reestablish those with fermented foods. So apple cider vinegar is probably one of the best because it kills off yeast and fungus, and it also is a fermented food that feeds good bacteria. That's one of my favorites. Sauerkraut, kimchi, any fermented vegetables. I do caution people against dairy, so I do caution people against yogurt and kefir until you get stronger and healthier. In the beginning, your body can't handle it. It's too congesting. And kombucha. I know we all love kombucha, but it's a wild fermentation. It actually feeds yeast and fungus. Body Ecology, Donna Gates, does not recommend kombucha for that reason. And I've experienced that with people that do not do well when they drink kombucha. I know it's hard to say, we all love our kombucha. So we need to reestablish good bacteria. That's part of the healing process. Okay, so to review, diet, not feeding it, strengthening digestion, having strong stomach acid, and then getting fermented foods into our diet somehow. Again, the most basic ones you could do are the Bragg's apple cider vinegar, sauerkraut, and kimchi. You can also take probiotics. There's women's probiotics, there's men's probiotics, there's vaginal probiotics for that specific issue. There's probiotics to replenish after a run of antibiotics. There's all kinds of probiotics, but those are helpful to reestablish that good bacteria as well. The best thing you can do if you have any infectious issue is you can clean out your colon and your lymph. That's 90% of your immune system. Okay, I'm kind of making up that number just because I know there's some immune components in the liver and thymus and other parts. But 90+% of your immune system is found in your colon, in your gut, and in your lymph. And if you're struggling with infections, if you're struggling with yeast infections, bladder infections, all these symptoms of systemic yeast and candida, if you're getting sick all the time, you have a weak immune system, it's your colon and it's your lymph. How much time do we have left, Jill?
20 minutes.
All right. So that is crucial to reestablish health in those areas because the colon is your guardian. It's supposed to allow only good stuff in, and it's supposed to keep bad guys out, and it's supposed to eliminate waste. And then the lymph is actually your waste disposal system of the human body. It's your trash compactor. It's your garbage dump. It's supposed to eliminate all the waste. And if it's not doing that, we're going to have health issues. Now, how do we know it's not doing that? Well, we get swelling. We have swelling here. We've had our tonsils or adenoids removed. Women have pain under their arms, breast lumps, breast cancer, any breast-related issues, soreness in your breasts around your cycle. All that stuff is just bling bling, like red flag that you have lymphatic congestion. And this is a big deal when we talk about cancer, breast cancer specifically. Man, if our medical community would just like take what they learned in medical school about the human body and the lymph system and just teach people that, we could cut out so much of the suffering that we have today. But we don't. We use chemotherapy and toxic drugs. It's just crazy. So if we can learn about the lymph, because it is our immune system, and we can clean up our immune system, we won't have the ability of infectious organisms to live in our body. Again, it will be that clean flowing river. You got a good flowing cardiovascular system and lymph system and a cleaned out colon, no infectious organism can set up shop. So that's why it's so important to clean those parts of the body. So colon cleanses, I have a 10-day colon cleanse I give people all the time. I have lymph cleanses I give people. Oh my gosh, I could tell you so many stories about people doing the lymph cleanse and getting healed. It's just amazing. We clean out like the toxicity in the body and we get well. This is why so many people are sick today. Spiritually speaking, biblically speaking, the way I tell people is we have polluted our holy temples. We're made in God's image and we've polluted them. And this isn't to make anybody feel bad or guilty, it's to help us to all wake up and to take responsibility and to get back in alignment with who God wants us to be, which is one with Him. And the systems we're choosing and the system of medicine we're choosing is not of God's heart. Trust me. Ooh, I almost got emotional there. So one of the best things you can do for the immune system is aloe vera juice. I have these tablets called Aloe Gold I love to give people because it strengthens the immune system. You know, some of the most powerful things that are going to resist disease and infectious organisms are things that are outside in the sun all day, every day, like aloe. All these desert plants are amazing for healing the body. You know how many desert plants are used to fight cancer? Aloe vera is one of them. Chaparral, if you've ever heard of that. It's what the Native Americans used for cancer. Creosote bush grows all over. I used to live in Las Vegas. It grew everywhere out there. So there's all kinds of powerful herbs. Aloe is one of my favorites. So I like Aloe Life is the company I use. Aloe Gold tablets are a concentrated, like 4-to-1 or 10-to-1. It's a concentrated aloe. So it's great for the immune system. Hang on, we're going to save them for the end. Another really good thing, and I talked a lot about this in the mineral class and the probiotic class I did in the other series, but it's Inner Vitality Plant Minerals. That's a name brand. It's Morningstar Inner Vitality. That's what we use. It's a blend of fulvic and humic minerals. Okay, minerals protect our body. Minerals build our immune system. Every cell of the body needs minerals to function, and minerals eliminate weak, infectious disease organisms. You want to know how you have a healthy plant in your garden? Fertilize it. What are you fertilizing it with? Minerals. It helps it grow. It helps it resist disease. If our plants were strong and our soil was strong and the minerals in the soil were strong, our plants wouldn't get attacked by bugs. Again, I make those comparisons to the human body. You take fulvic, humic plant minerals, it not only gives you trace minerals, but it protects our system and it keeps infectious organisms out. And in fact, in a lot of people, it can cause kind of a detox. So I love, love, love plant minerals that have fulvic and humic minerals in them. So after we've done all that, it is important to rid the body of infectious organisms. And I stress that you have to do this because I talk about like you have to, like if you have a mole in your garden, most likely he's not just going to go away on his own. Like you have to get rid of that mole somehow. And so same thing with these Candida yeast organisms. We can change our diets and we can not feed them and we can do some things for our immune system. But a lot of times we have to actually root out the infection. And people will notice infection coming out of their body. Mucusy all the time. Mucus will come out in people's stools. People have pockets of infections come out. I don't want to get too descriptive, but you see all kinds of crazy stuff come out of people. And it's because there's pockets of infection in people, and you actually have to go in there and root that stuff out, especially with parasites, but also with these yeast, fungal, mold type of infections as well. So parasite and yeast cleanse, I think it's important to do both. I use the Dr. Hulda Clark parasite stuff. She has a 3-part and a 7-part cleanse. The 7-part cleanse is more for like tapeworms and other things, but also to do a Candida yeast cleanse along with it. The one I usually have people do two. One is called Candida Quick Cleanse. It's tasteless. It's a teaspoon, I think once or twice a day, and it's like a 7-day cleanse. It's super easy. It's called Candida Quick Cleanse, and then I have them followed up with something called Candida Gone by Renew Life, which is like a 30-day cleanse. And so this has various herbs and things in it to actually kill yeast organisms. Now the difference between antibiotics and taking things that God gave us, plants that God gave us, is with antibiotics, no intelligence, man-made, kills and wipes out everything in the body. With God's creations, intelligence knows good from bad, right from wrong, kills the organisms that are overgrown that shouldn't be there, doesn't destroy our good, healthy bacteria. That's the difference. So that's why the things that God gave us are so much more powerful long term. There's also a product I like called Fungal Forte. It's Garden of Life's original medicine line, which is their practitioner line. It's called Fungal Forte, and it's a 14-day cleanse, and I've given that to people a lot of times. And you have to be cautious, because if you have a really bad, deep systemic yeast or fungal overgrowth, you can have a reaction to it. And cold flu symptoms, break out in a rash, because it's killing off yeast organisms in your body. And remember, the waste byproduct of yeast organisms is alcohol, acetaldehyde. It's waste that the body has to eliminate. So some people have to go slower, faster, it just depends on what's going on with your body. Herbs, there's a whole lot of herbs, but I don't want to tell you all, but a few of the best ones are black walnut. Black walnut kills parasites, but it also kills yeast, fungal, mold organisms. It's also the highest known herbal source of iodine. So I'm a big fan of black walnut. Pau d'arco, which is a bark off a tree. All barks of trees inhibit infectious organisms. Why? God's smart. He's a good designer. The bark is like the skin. It's the covering of the tree. It's to protect the inner tree from infectious organisms. How are trees getting eaten by these bugs and these beetles and stuff? Because the trees are weak. Or it's an invasive species it's never seen before and it doesn't know how to handle it. So barks of trees are very strong antimicrobials. The black walnut, it's actually the outer portion, the green part of it that's used against parasites. It's the outer shell of the walnut. The inner part is where the iodine is. That's a very powerful nut. So Pau d'arco bark, very good for yeast, fungus. You can drink it as a tea. You can take it as a tincture. Iodine used to be in hospitals for infectious disease before they replaced it with antibiotics and these man-made things. So iodine is amazing for resisting disease. I highlight a product called Parasite M. Parasite M is in like microbial. I think of it as an antimicrobial. It's a blend of all of these herbs. It's got olive leaf and Pau d'arco and all these antimicrobial herbs in it. And it's probably my favorite formula. There's lots of good formulas out there. It's my favorite formula that's just going to help with all microorganisms and keeping them at bay. Viruses, parasites, fungus, mold, yeast, candida, etc. And then good old oregano. Oregano is something I use ever since I got into natural health. The oregano, I only recommend the North American Herb and Spice product. I'm sure there's other ones out there, but theirs grows over 5,000 feet in the mountains of Turkey and Greece, and it's super strong, powerful oregano. And it's called oreganol. And people know, they get a cold flu, they catch it early, they take a little bit of that, boom, it just knocks it out. That stuff is so powerful for knocking out different types of germs and things. And then the last thing I'll mention is a couple, they're actually kind of balancers. They're more like probiotic products. One is called Synthol. Synthol, by Arthur Andrew Medical, there's a lot of naturopaths and health practitioners that's all they use for candida issues. Now, of course, there's diet change, But Synthol is like the main thing they give them, and it works because it has enzymes that break down yeast and Candida and fungus organisms. It breaks down their cell wall, the protective layer, so that the immune system can more easily destroy them. And it has probiotics and good bacteria to reestablish good bacteria in the gut. So that's a really good product that I've had a lot of success with. I had a gal, she had 2 children that were had symptoms of Asperger's. And that was she gave them that product, and she came back a month later and she's like, my kids don't even have any symptoms anymore. It was crazy. Like that was that product. So I've seen some really good results with that. And then Prescripticist, I should have talked about it when I talked about probiotics, but it's soil organisms. Prescripticist, amazing for bowel issues, lower bowel disorders especially, but it's got soil organisms in it, and this is why we should be outside in the dirt, not be scared of our children playing in the dirt, because again, that's part of God's design and creation. So those are just some ideas to help you kind of overcome this Candida yeast issue. But really, to highlight again, the most important things is good nutrition, not feeding it, and getting the waste out of your body, cleansing, especially the colon, especially the lymph, but really the whole body, kidneys, liver, all of it. Once all the waste is cleared out, the Candida yeast organisms have no reason to be there. They have no reason to grow out of control. And they can't be there because there's not an environment for them to be there. Does that make sense? You take away the environment in which they live, you'll be better off. This is why I always recommend for parents to get their kids off of dairy. I mean, I see eczema, psoriasis, allergy, asthma, all these things clear up oftentimes just getting off the dairy. It's so heavy, it's so mucus forming, it doesn't matter if it's raw. Our children are being born compromised. So we have to just change our thinking a little bit. And until we get healthy again, until we reestablish balance again, we're going to have to be restrictive on what we eat. And that's hard for me to explain to people because, well, God made that, and we use that for food for thousands of years. And you can make all those arguments, and you can eat those foods, but you will stay sick. I've just seen it. I've seen it too many times in too many people. And I want people to get well. That's why I do these fun classes. So we'll end it there. I don't know how much time I have left on the camera. We can ask some questions because I know there were a couple.
So pretty much forever, no grains.
It depends on you. It depends on you. Most people are going to do good for at least 6 months, a year without grains. Feeling healthy, feeling amazing. And introduce them. Yep.
Slowly.
Yep. Now, if you look at Body Ecology Diet, she first allows the ancient seed grains, quinoa, millet, amaranth, and buckwheat.
So those are also out?
No, well, in the beginning, I think those should be out. She's okay with them on her program, and again, it depends on the severity of your issue. But those would be the first things you could add back in. Quinoa is actually a seed. Most people don't have issues with it. But you could add back in some oatmeal or some other things, but you really want to keep it in moderation and make sure you don't have a reaction to it. I tell you, you'll know from experience. You get grains out of your diet completely for 3 months, 6 months, and you add back in oatmeal, your body will tell you. You'll either be okay with it or you'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, people are laughing because they've experienced it, but I sure have. I've seen it so many times. People get grains, sugar, these kind of things out of their diet. They eat it, violent reaction. So you'll know. You'll know. Yes?
Consider corn a grain?
I consider corn a complex starch. So I'd put it in that category. With vegetables to be cautious of, potatoes mainly, but also corn. Those would probably be the two.
Mm-hmm. Where does rice fit in? Brown.
Rice is a grain.
So it's a grain. So
It is.
it's gone too.
Correct.
Popcorn too.
Popcorn, definitely. I tell people if they're going to eat corn, eat sweet corn on the cob once in a while. But popcorn is just starch. And then you throw on top of it, butter and fat, and it's just... Again, we like popcorn. If you don't have any issues with popcorn, okay. Trying to heal your body? Don't eat popcorn.
Yeah.
We got to know where we're at, So, any other questions?
What do you recommend for babies if you got a new baby and you don't want them to have milk? if they're not nursing.
Right, so if you have a new baby that's not nursing, a couple of things you can do is, one is you can make your own formula. And Dr. Weston A. Price has different formulas you can do, some with goat's milk because it's easier to digest, and others without it. But what I have seen, and I shouldn't say I've done this a lot personally, but I know other people who have, other health practitioners had good results with just having a child eat fruit and then coconut and avocado for substance and the fats. And I've had really good results with that. Now, once your child's 6 months old, again, I think it's a myth that we're like, oh my gosh, we've got to have milk or the child's not going to make it. Once the child's 6 months old, he can eat a lot of stuff. But if they're 2 months, 3 months, you know, that could be tougher. So you might do some pureed fruits or a little, you know, some coconut water or some coconut or something like that, or you can make your own formula.
And is it important if they are nursing for the mother not to drink milk?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it's crucial. Yeah, I've seen children with rashes and eczema, and they're just nursing. They're not drinking milk. Mom stops the milk, all goes away.
Yep, did it.
You've seen that, huh? Yeah, and that actually happened with my wife, with our first daughter, Naomi. She was getting a rash. Mom was still doing the raw milk. Had to give up the raw milk. And then, yeah, no more issues since. So, yep, it's tough. It's, again, because our children are being born compromised. Mom's not handling it. It's getting through her system undigested, coming out into the breast milk undigested, going into the baby, and baby can't digest it. So, yeah, it's rough. Yes?
Do you recommend doing the colon cleanse before the lymph, or can you do them at the same time? Or?
I usually recommend colon first always, and then kidney, and then lymph. Now, I'm not saying you can't do some of these kind of in combination, but in general, it's colon first, kidney second, lymph third. Those are all your main waste disposal systems. Then liver. And the liver is important, but it's got nowhere to go if you have a blocked up colon and kidney. And people jump to liver cleansing and they get sick.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
What about coffee enemas, organic coffee enemas for elimination of toxic waste?
So you can do coffee enemas. I recommend them during a cleanse, like 3-day, 7-day, 10-day, whatever
Right,
cleanse you're doing.
Not continually.
Not continuously. It's acidic. It pulls minerals from your body. It causes dehydration. It taxes your adrenals. I am much more a fan of lemon in an enema, baking soda in an enema, especially long term. But if you want to do coffee for a 7-day liver cleanse, that's fine.
I don't want to. I'm just,
Yeah.
just rated it somewhere else.
Yep.
Good.
So, but you can do other things long term, but the coffee has too many negatives to do it long term.
Good.
Yes.
So the 10-day colon cleanse by Spirit of Health, that's an actual product that you have?
It's a no, it's not a product. It's a sheet that has a whole
The
directions of what to do. That's it. Yes.
I have a deep gnawing feeling all the time. Is that the yeast?
I'm not sure. Like a hunger or like,
That's when I get the cravings.
does it happen more at night?
I want it, no, pretty much all the time.
All the time.
But, and so crackers and all that kind of stuff takes care of that.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking it's talking to me.
Yes.
Feed me.
It could be that. It could also be if you're over acid. I don't know if you've had digestive acid issues, like if you drink coffee or do tomatoes or those kind of, no, not really. Then it's probably that. Because a lot of people are over acid, and so when they do crackers and stuff like that, it soothes the acidity condition. So yeah, it's hard for me to know for sure without talking to you more, but very likely.
I always figured it was the Candida
Yeah.
because it kind of calms down after I eat soft sugar.
Yeah, you make it happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
I know, exactly.